My name is Oliver Dixon, and I'm a South African broadcaster and political analyst. I think the first victory here, and it's an important victory for us to note, is that there were many detractors who thought this moment wouldn't happen and that it wouldn't be successful. And I think we can be proud of South Africa and the South African government for pulling this off and having such a successful gathering. I think that's commendable because it shows that Africa is capable. But I think how I can gauge this moment is one where I think we finally had an opportunity to insert ourselves in the conversation more aggressively. The fact that the African Union is participating for the first time as a member, as a regional member in this, is an important and significant milestone. The fact that last night, the night before the first day, Friday evening, all African heads of state, well, most of them met prior to this, and they discussed the issues that matter to them on their agenda. I mean, Africa would be very interested in renewable energy, climate change, and very importantly, critical minerals, because we're a continent richly endowed with that. And I think tomorrow, session 3, which is taking place Sunday morning, I think is the session that's really important for Africa to really make the case for it. The debt restructuring story is also an important one, and I think the fact that that was the first and most important part of the discussion starting this off, I think really centers Africa's problems in ways that I think matters the most. Look, and I think one of the biggest impediments of the world is inequality. And I think just to maybe focus on South Africa for a little bit, we're one of the most unequal countries in the world. And I want to define inequality so that we can know what we're talking about. Inequality is the distance between the rich and the poor. And in South Africa, that distance is incredibly wide. And so that reflects where the global south is. It finds itself in a place where the global south have to fight for vaccines, for equitable access to resources. And the distance between the global south and the global north is one that keeps growing in ways that isn't particularly healthy, right? I mean, think about security crises across the continent. It's seemingly getting worse and worse and worse, despite the fact that a lot more of us are democratizing. Sudan is a good example of a country that's been forgotten by the world. And I think when we talk about inequality and the security crisis in the continent, centering the African voice and the global south voice means that we have to talk about countries that are going through really tough time, like Sudan. And I think South Africa has done a relatively good job of it. Do I think that it could have been done better? I certainly think so. I think the Sherpas could have directed the conversation from the start of the presidency in one where they more aggressively focused on the insecurity of Africa. I mean, if you think about parts of East Africa having food security crisis, particularly because of ongoing drought, but also exacerbated by a security crisis across East Africa. I think that could have, and the North, the global North has a big role to play in assisting the global South in solving it, because the global North has pillaged the global South in many ways. And so I think there should have been a lot more of a focus on that. But I'm happy that this is a good start to it. It's quite unfortunate. I think there will be no legacy. And I think that's because the US will redefine what the G20 means and what the G20 is. And that's because it will reflect their politics. And I think they'll do it in a way that wipes out the work that was done. And it's a sad thing to say, but I think it's true. I mean, President Donald Trump has made it quite clear the themes of sustainability, inclusivity, and solidarity are not themes he's interested in. The themes he's interested in, and it reflects his politics, are exclusion, division, and unsustainability. Pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement is an example of unsustainable, exclusionary, divisive politics. And so I think they'll use their volume, they'll use their might to redefine this. This will become about talking about the capital markets once again, talking about the centering of unfettered capital politics. And I don't think South Africa's legacy is going to last much beyond this. I think South Africa, the legacy of this will spill on over to other multilateral bodies, like IPSA, like BRICS, and maybe to a lesser extent the multilateral, the bilateral and trilateral engagements that African states will have going forward. I think the legacy will be there, but it will be disintegrated. It's quite unfortunate the direction the world is going in, but that's what I think will happen.
So my last question is going to be, enhancing the representation of the African country at the global level. I mean, that's the long overdue question for the African country. So in what ways that should be realized in the future?
A number of things. I think as a continent we need to decide what our priorities are, and I don't think we have that sorted out. I think it changes every once in a while, and I think we need to strengthen our own multilateral bodies. The African Union needs to become a much more stronger voice on the continent and in shaping what the African story is. I think it's seen as a by-the-way organization that's sitting on the side of African politics, not at the center of African politics. And so I think we need to focus on strengthening our own multilateral institutions so that we can solve those crises ourselves. And I think in that instance, the world will have to take us a lot more serious once we're able to solve our own problems, determinant based on what we want, based on what we have, and how we can achieve it.